So we often see young people see the games industry as inaccessible, too competitive, or only for programmers. What can the industry do to address these skill shortages? Currently, right now, we're going to be facing a bit of a talent drought because of Brexit informing a lot of, we're going to not be able to rely on overseas talent as easily as we once were. We need to be focusing on our own homegrown industry talent like you guys in this room right now. So my name is George Rankin. I'm a level designer at Supermassive Games. I'm a martial arts practitioner. I do some drumming and I'm an occasional climber. So you can tell I'm a very physical person. And I like to bring that to my games. To give some credit to what I've been doing before, I've worked at PlayStation Sony very quickly as like a 3-month QA internship contract, where I was working on Hidden Agenda and The Inpatient for Supermassive. And then I had a 6-month design internship at Splash Damage. I learned a lot there about shooters and how exactly they work. And now I'm working full-time at Supermassive Games, where we've just shipped Man of Medan. So talking about portfolio and why at least you can be listening to me. My portfolio was reviewed by folks at all these different studios here multiple times. So you've got Anthony Padacasio at Ubisoft Toronto and Matt Rose as a level designer and a producer respectively. At Ruffian Games, I had the privilege of having Billy Thompson, creative director, look at my portfolio, Luke Botham from Sumba Digital, Mystery Gentleman from Creative Assembly who are Meta EGX, and even when you've got the job that you think you've got, you can still improve things, because even in the Splash Damage like design roundtable, they just brought up my portfolio for fun and started roasting it to pieces, so you're never done. There's always more to be doing. So this is my good pal Joey. He is a recruiter at Splash Damage, and this is something I thought I'd quote him here. It's like, if someone followed your guide and applied for 10 jobs, they'd be interviewed easily for one, I'm sure of it. That's the highest praise I've had so far. Success rate is, we've got my pal here, Stoyan, he's now at CD Projekt Red. Ian Morrison, he's with me at Supermassive Games. I've got my other pal at Sketchbook Games, and another success with folks at Outplay, King, and Sumba Digital. So again, like what I have to say, I hope is worthwhile and valuable for you guys. What I am going to be talking about is how to curate your portfolio, how to format your CV, how to compose that cover letter, how to apply effectively, and how to work that interview. What I will not be discussing as well, just to kind of clear that up, is not how to do a list of like favorable portfolio pieces. I can't do that because every discipline is going to be different and per studio. How to work the art to design, code test either, or even how to do your aspired role. There's so many out there that I can't cover them in this time frame. The biggest takeaway that you want to be having whenever you're talking to a recruiter is you've got to respect the fact that they've got very short short attention spans. Recruiters could be examining hundreds of you, especially for like very entry-level roles. Some folks who haven't even got like degrees in games, we're trying to get a job in there as well, and they've got to filter out all those different candidates. A typical recruitment process is going to simply look a lot like this. You apply, you may get a phone or a Skype interview if they like the cut of your jib, they like the look of your CV, they like the look of your portfolio. If they've still got too many candidates, they're going to give you a discipline-based test as well. So that can be the art test, that can be the code test. This is a lot of people coming in. If they still need to get to know you, and there is going to be like a sort of culture fit that they want to do, they want to meet you in person, or maybe even over a Skype call, just to get a kind of a feel for your personality. And again, at the end of that, once they've filtered through all these different candidates, you'll be given the final offer potentially. And at some point, you may drop out for whatever reason, which I can cover a little bit later on. So let's break it down. We're going to be going into each individual bit. Portfolio pillars. The biggest takeaway I had when I was having all my stuff reviewed was you want to be adhering to 3 distinct pillars. You want it to be succinct, every element's got to be accessible, and every element's got to be relevant as well. By succinct, I mean the content is very clear. What you're saying doesn't waste too much time. You get straight to the point, don't mess around, don't make me read reams of text. Short descriptions, and try and use that professional jargon. That is a skill you slowly accumulate over time. Also, by accessible is keep your URL short. Use hyperlinks where you can, use thumbnail links where you can, make everything as intuitive as possible. This is almost like UX. Minimize the amount of keystrokes that you need to have to navigate around your website. Put as little resistance as you need to get around. What I mean by relevant as well is keep things tailored. If you're being hired for a level design role, why am I suddenly seeing like tech art stuff? It's not relevant to the role that you're being hired towards. Keep it specialized and keep it not outdated. The stuff you do in first year, you will improve phenomenally by the time you get to final year, whether that's a 4-year course or a 3-year course. Your content, your stuff is always improving. The stuff I've got in my first year doesn't exist. It's not good enough. It doesn't show the best of what you can offer. 3 portfolio pillars. Like if you had to take a picture of any of these slides, this is the one I'd like you to take a picture of. It is succinct, it is accessible, it is relevant. So after all that, my portfolio started to look like this. thankfully I grabbed this before it's been updated with like man number down, etc. This is what like a portfolio website could look like in a desktop-friendly form. As you can see, it's got clear navigation, it's got thumbnails, and it's got external links. But as I said, like you can use hyperlinks instead, instead of like these really unsexy like URLs that span across the page that look awful. But yeah, what you're trying to do is make things look attractive and clear and concise to the people. You can see exactly what I'm about as well, and you shouldn't have to scroll that far to see what I'm all about. Sort of formula that I've figured out for like portfolio pages and how they want to be orientated is, at the very top, if you've worked on like a game jam piece, if you've worked on a submission or you've worked on a project, and I've never seen your game, I've never seen it even marketed before, you need to tell me what exactly that game is. I've worked on a twin-stick multiplayer competitive shooter called Fragmental. Boom. You've told me exactly what it's going to be. Straight away, you're using the genres that I'm already familiar with to build a picture of what it's trying to be. So that small descriptive text can be as simple as 3 sentences, and I'm pretty sure you can see everything you need to say in 3 sentences. Describe exactly what I'm looking at. I've never seen it before. Just describe it in 1 single sentence and keep it succinct. If it was a group project, talk about your contributions. What exactly did you do? That's what you're going to be cued into in your interview. If it's a solo project, like a passion project or something you're doing on the side, tell me why you did it, like what did you want to do with it? And the final one's going to be about the challenges and the details that you went into as well. Any like extra like further bits of nuggets of information. And finally, you want a download link as well. Do expect that sometimes you're not going to be able to have the IT team, like every studio, is not going to be able to like download. They're going to be screaming at anybody who like downloads anything from like a dodgy website. But if you have like something available, that says to me, okay, you've got something presentable on Steam, like the Steam Greenlight page, on a company website or an itch.io. That says a bit, that gives what you're saying a lot more validity. If you've got something like that. Underneath that, because I've never seen it, I want to see what your game's all about. A little small video, 1 to 2 minutes long. If it's 10 minutes, if it's a 10-minute long playthrough, I'm wasting time. I could see more applicants who've got like shorter video playthroughs, and edit these down just like the best bits. So it's almost like 6 seconds of annotated footage. Like I did this, and then I did that, and this is a key beat, and this is another gameplay beat, and this is another bit I wanted to work on, etc., etc., etc. It's almost like vines. You're just kind of whipping them out, and you're hitting them with all the key bits of information that you need to get across. Underneath that, we want to talk about the key responsibilities that you had if it was a group project, or even some other things if it was a solo project. 3 to 8 is the best formula that you want to work towards. And these are not a list of features, these are a list of responsibilities that you're in charge of. That's what we're trying to get across. Underneath that is the development shots. Yes, it's nice to have an idea of like where you went from, like the paper prototype, the blockouts, to all the way to like the final product at the end. Annotate these. Use a little blackboard at the bottom or a blackboard at the top. Because if you're taking a picture of like blueprints to show an example of what you've worked on, then I'm not going to be able to see like your annotation on top of that. Give your image like a baked-in blackboard so you can annotate this text on top of that. For level designers as well, I will instantly be able to see what your level is trying to do, and if it works for the game that you're working with, by just having a top-down as it is. I was reviewing one girl's CSGO map at EGX, and I could tell that she understood exactly how CSGO worked, just because I could look at that radar and say, okay, you've got A site, you've got B site, you've got mid, I know where CT spawn is, I know where T spawn is. She understood, and I got it instantly. I don't need a showreel to show me that. And your pipeline familiarity will really help out with this one. So I'm pulling some stuff that I had for Fragmental. So step 1, I'm describing like we did a bit of paper prototyping. Of those 30 prototypes, only 4 were used. You can move on to say, hey, I did some grey boxing after that, and this meant that we needed to widen the levels for AI to even navigate around. Scripting. Turns out we need to have the AI be able to vault over cover as well. That was another asset we needed to figure out how we're going to do. You can maybe want to talk about playtesting. What did that reveal? You could say the rounds were too slow, so let's try and speed these up. What else do you need to add to that? And again, you could say, part of like the final product was I need to get some beauty shots for like the website and PR business. So again, you're including that pipeline familiarity into the actual page itself. Basic do's and don'ts is you have polished game jam submissions. You can do 48 hours on the clock and come back to it after 2 days, come back to it for like a couple of weeks afterwards and just get through that content, give it a nice bit of polish. Again, like I said, link everything. Keep your content as accessible as possible. If it's on Steam Greenlight, if it's on itch.io, I want to be able to see it on the final product. Keep it there. List the software that you used. If we're hiring you for a Unity position where you have to use Unity, but you're more familiar with UE4, that's going to kind of give some mixed messages. So that gives people a better idea of like what kind of developer you are trying to be. Timestamp your work as well. Figure out, it's just to help people understand like how relevant is your content. Did you work on this back 2 years ago? Did you work on this really recently? And credit others where possible. Say that this is only what I did, but this is what all these other people did as well. This really clarifies like what exactly your contribution was. And on top of that is consider your SEO, which is search engine optimization. If somebody's just kind of finding around, scrummaging around for somebody, they go, oh my God, this person's got the exact skills I need. That's because you need to be thinking about what kind of hashtags is the search engine looking for, or all these other links that can be found and located to your website. Do not include, like, again, irrelevant roles of content. You're being hired for a specific role. You're gunning for that role. If you want to be a technical artist, you go for a technical artist position. If you want to be a coder, you work for that coder position. Don't say you're also this and you're also that to broaden your job aspects. What you're really doing is confusing me as a recruiter. I don't know what you want anymore. Just tell me what you're trying to be hired for. Don't include just university submissions, otherwise you're all going to have very similar portfolios. What I would love to see is more submissions for game jams, personal projects, and even like just learning exercises. And for the love of God, please don't say you were a lead. If you're in a student project, at best, you're not being hired for those roles at all. If you're in a lead position, you don't have that world level experience. As a student, you're just communicating between a small department of like 8 to 10 people. You are not in a lead position just yet. You're not being hired for that. And one thing that's also come across as well, I was talking to Joey, was if you've got showreels, like on say Vimeo, don't have them password protected and then not provide them with the password either. Again, this is you're gatekeeping your content from even being accessed. Keep things accessible. And also consider as well, like, what does your portfolio look like on a phone, like a mobile device? So again, this is equally navigable. Also think about download times. And I say mobile as well because you might want to have like a tablet or a phone on you at the time and just put this in front of somebody and say, hey, look, I'm the best person for the role that you've got on your website for now. Next up, resume. Right, I've got to really get through this now. Formatting the stuff. Formatting your entire experience. The key most thing that you want to be putting up there, number one, top thing, is your contact details. Don't include your house number, that's a little bit weird. But do tell me, like, you're from Guildford, you're from Stoke-on-Trent, you're from London. Tell me where you are. Include ways for me to get back in contact with you. This is your phone number, your email, a working website link, and your availability too. This could be, I'm available the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be available the next 3 months. Hit me up whenever you need me to come for a job. And a small personal description. This was actually a really interesting point. Professional summaries are very large and bulky, and they occupy too much screen space on the portfolio, on the CV itself. Just include like a small, almost like Tinder profile of like what you want to be kind of conveying to the person. So again, I can just work out like, hey, I'm a martial arts practitioner, I'm a drummer, occasional climber, and I'm a dog lover as well. This makes you much more impressionable in the recruiter's head. They can remember someone who's a tea drinker from Yorkshire a lot better than just a face, because they will see hundreds of them. That can be a lot more memorable than just a face. Next up is the hard skills. What are you being hired for? UV4, Unity, Houdini? These are the things you want to be putting up there, and the scripting languages that you're familiar with. Then you've got the actual, some other softer skills like documentation writing, pipeline familiarity, version control, interdisciplinary communication. These are like the soft skills that I want to be talking about, not just I can work well to a schedule, because that's a given. Professional experiences too. I want to be including the job role that you explicitly did, the company, a link to the company that you were working at, a link to the game that you're working on as well, say it's a trailer, say it's an actual devoted website, and the timeline when you worked there in months and years. I once managed to get someone to think I had 2 years experience at Ruffian Games just because the months were like between January and December, so it looked like I'd worked from like 2019 to 2020, for example. They thought I'd been working there for ages. No, that wasn't the case, which is why I say put your timeline in like months as well as years. And at the bottom, this is like the last relevant content. I love how everyone's got like the phone and the at the same time. It's like a Mexican wave. You're including your additional experiences or the stuff that is still relevant to the employer, but it's not as important. These are the game jams you took part in, the conventions you went to, and the volunteer work you've taken part in. Your education is going to just be the completed courses and the date. You're the only person who cares about your first or your 2-1. You're not going to be asked about this in the interview. You'll be asked about your attitude, you'll be asked about your mindset, and you'll be asked about your experiences. These are the key takeaways that you want to be getting across. Only you can be proud of your first. At the bottom, you've got the references, but these can be in shorthand, so you can just say something like, references available on request. Finally, the cover letter. This is kind of hit or miss whether the studios will even want to read your cover letter or not, so I'm preparing you with the idea that potentially you do need to write a cover letter. Effectively, you've got to tailor each cover letter to the studio themselves. There was a horrible position where someone was professing their love for the third-person shooter genre whilst I was working at Splash Damage, and as they wrote it, they signed it off saying, I'd really love to have a position at Rebellion. he didn't get a call back. Keep reiterating in the job role like what you want to be hired for as well, because again, these folks have got short attention spans, and they've got to do not just your position, but everyone else's position as well. They've got to see hundreds of them. Keep reiterating everything like, I want to be hired for a level design position. This is the vacancy that I want to be filled for. Personally, address the recruiter if possible. This means doing a bit of research on LinkedIn, talking to people. Again, recruiters are people, just talk to them. They are human and can find out these things. Try and match your previous experiences to the job criteria that they're looking for. So if they've got like a bunch of bullet point things, you can say, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done this. Give like a final standout comment, say I would love to work with the talented team at Lucid Games. Chat about your availability. I'm going to be available the next 3 months, for example. And mention you'd like to be even mentioned for like future positions, for future junior positions, should one be available in due time. Don't include the same cover letter for each studio for the story I've mentioned before. Try not to repeat the content that's already in your CV. You're repeating yourself. You're putting too much, you're blocking things out in a way that you don't need to. It's now not an unoptimized way of conveying all this information. And try not to use more than a page either. Keep it succinct, like I said. So what I mean by like matching it to the criteria, I tried, say this was a job that I had, this was some stuff from the game design role at Supermassive. You'll be blocking out gameplay in white box levels, and you can say, my responsibilities in X project a while ago involved taking a number of levels through the studio's pipeline from white boxing through to final release. You're matching yourself to the criteria that they've got. And the same again can be said for the ability to balance not just game content based on feedback. That's what they're asking for. So you back it up by saying, throughout the levels, working on Fragmental, I developed a constantly iterated, balance adjusted the gameplay according to the 30 playtests I conducted. This is how you bulk out. This is how you fatten up your cover letter. Yes, there can be scary things writing cover letters, but eventually all of them become very, very tailored. And what's fun to do is if you have like a sort of Google folder, you've got a master template at the top there, which has got like a fantastic intro that you just need to swap out the nouns for like splash damage for rebellion, for example, and you've got like a final standout comment at the bottom, like a final closer, with a nice empty body in the middle. With that, your first cover letter is going to be like brand new content. It's stuff you've never written before. And you get to letter 2 and you realize, actually no, I can steal a couple of sentences and throw it over in this one as well. You realize that's kind of saved you a bit of time. Get on to letter 3 and letter 4, you realize you're just kind of having to copy and paste a bunch of different things. Maybe like smooth it out by rewording some of the sentences. But the time you get to letter 5, you'll find that you've already written your letter already. You're just going to copy and paste it from all these different ones. You speed up that entire process much more quickly. And applying to the studios as well, and trying to effectively keep track of all these different things. I used a website called GameDev Map because that allowed me to go to the exact studio that I wanted to just look at the individual studios' websites. Yes, you get like Aardvark, Swift, Amicus, Indeed, LinkedIn, but they're not going to have absolutely every single opportunity. You want to look on the website themselves, and don't constrain yourself just to the north or to the Midlands or the south or Scotland. Like you need to be thinking much further afield here. You'll be quite nomadic for the first few years of your career potentially. And this is what the website looks like. That's a bit of a stretched image. But yeah, at the time when I was looking to graduate in 2017, this was showing about 250 UK games companies. This figure will have grown over time. By 2020, it could be closing in on 300. This does not include things like architectural visualization studios, VR solution studios, even digital media as well. So this is just kind of like core games companies. Maybe it doesn't even include the micro studios that have not been like found and added to this database just yet. So what I'm trying to say here is, yes, it's good, but it's not completely comprehensive. Do not take it as law, but it's a very good starting place. I don't like doing these kind of like, here's my experience thing, because then you've got to like have something to extrapolate from my experience. From here, what I'm trying to say is, there was 215 companies that I could find. Only 75 of those, roughly, had vacancies. I had a Google spreadsheet that was like, had about 16 entries. Those were 16 entries that I could even apply to for junior design positions, even QA as well. I got about 6 responses. I consider that pretty good. And of those responses, I only got 3 interviews. I buggered one of them up and I managed to get 2 offers. One was the PlayStation Sony role, and the other one was the splash damage role I got later on, because the recruitment processes take way too long. But you need to be keeping track of like all these different processes, all these different things going on. So keep like a Google Sheet as well. Google Drive is your friend. Have a Google Sheet where you can say what the company name is, where the link to the actual vacancy is, copy link that over, whether you've applied or not with just a simple tick, when you applied, and that tells you as well to have, like 2 weeks later down the line, you can contact this person. That's what you want in like another column. Contact this person that says, okay, did you get my application a while ago? And you can start building up a dialogue from there, as well as internship season. Everyone does internship seasons at different times of the year. Sometimes it's through the summer, sometimes it's through the autumn. Sometimes they can start looking in autumn time and get something hooked up by springtime, because they've got to filter out all these different candidates that are always applying. Because what you're trying to do effectively is just cut through the noise and try and email the recruiters directly. This makes you, again, more memorable and they're more likely to hire you. So I've been working with Shay Thompson, who is this brilliant woman who is a presenter at Level Up Link Up and BAFTA Games, London Games Festival as well. We both believe that in this industry, we talk a lot about wanting to support upcoming talent from all different backgrounds in the UK. If I can help bridge that gap and actually make some tiny form of change, that's all that matters. What we've been working on together is this little spreadsheet. It's just like grassroots at the moment. We just want to collect and collaborate and collate this tiny little spreadsheet that can grow over time, full of different internships. It's not going to be fully populated now. We just know of a bunch of different studios that have done internships in the past, and we're looking to grow that. And it's going to be like a sort of like first port of call that you can go to and say, everyone will apply to this one right now. I know currently that King's got internships going on. I know that Splash Damage has got some internships going on for like UI positions. But ideally, yes, you should be able to find this spreadsheet on my website by going to this and clicking on that link. It should be easily accessible. This is like our debut. We're trying to sell it to you guys. So this is like a first port of call that you can go to. And finally, like the interviews. Should you get lucky, you've applied to all these interviews, you've applied to all these different studio applications, and you've got lucky with this interview. Ultimately, it is just a conversation. They're just trying to get on the same wavelength as you. They're just trying to feel you out. If they ask you a question, just answer it. You can say that you don't know the answer to this question. Maybe you need to Google something. Maybe you need to know this particular little thing. But it's best to answer the question where you can, at least with your past experience. Again, if you can, reference the job criteria. That's just kind of like off-the-cuff stuff. Discuss your processes as well. That's what you want to be trying to do. You're telling them like how you work, and they want to see like, is this even possible to work with? Don't badmouth previous experiences either. You don't need the person that makes them think, well, if you just talk bad about your previous studio and then we hire you and you eventually leave, well, you're going to be talking poorly about us. We don't need that. We don't need that kind of attitude, so we're not going to get you hired. At the end of the interview, take the time to ask them questions too. This tells me that you've done a bit of research. You want to understand more about the company. You can see a little bit more longevity in your career here. Ask them about their processes. Is this going to work for you? Their tools, are you familiar with them? If you get offered the job, is there something you could learn between being offered the job and actually doing the job itself? Understand their cultures and values. This is the personality fit. Not only do you have to have the skills, but you have to be a likable person as well. You've got to be very sociable, or at least personable at the very least. Learn to play the games as well. Understand why they make these different design decisions, why they would have done this particular art style, why they would have picked this particular system rules. And you've got no excuse if they've got free-to-play games. Understand exactly why they play these games and how they work and why they did these things. And like I said, they're just trying to match you to this, match you to their company values. Chances are you'll not get offered the job in some cases, and it's going to be like a hard because you just didn't meet the criteria because X, Y, Z. And this is going to give you a bit more transparency because sometimes you don't even get a response entirely. Sometimes your skills are no longer relevant. It's great to have like skill X, Y, and Z, but they're looking for like A, B, and Z. You don't have the full trifecta of what they're looking for. Sometimes the project needs change between when you're being hired, when they're looking for the role, and when they're looking to actually hire somebody. This has happened far too many times. Sometimes the studio's project will change over time and suddenly your role is no longer viable. They don't need you anymore. Sometimes you're just not the culture fit. Perhaps they've got a bunch of folks into football and you're not showing them that you are also a football fan and you're not the best person to be hired for that role. The project budget is always shifting and changing as well. They'll have a definitive amount, but they've got to think, is your salary going to be the one that breaks the budget over time? And the final one is, again, visa expenses. This is a big one too. Importing like talent from like the EU around the world takes money because they've got to actually kind of ship you in and start getting integrated into the studio. And that could be another reason why they think, actually, we might want to get the local talent instead because it's a lot easier to get them in preferably. And be prepared to answer like the why do you want to work here question, because that is, yeah, saying like you just want to be hired for the job isn't good enough. You want to give them passion, you're selling them this. But I find that like all of this has to start with like your portfolio. Your first impression nails you, that second impression, that's what you want to be selling them. That's really yeah, so I've been George. I'm free to answer any questions. Also want to point out I do free portfolio reviews as well. Take a picture of this slide. You can hit me up on Twitter. You'll find my website. And on my website, you'll be able to find the link to this slide as well. So the whole deck, because I know I've just been shouting a bunch of information at you guys.
Thank you very much.
Time for questions?
Yeah, I've got time for a couple of questions. What I can't do is get up to people further up. So, go on,
just throw it.
So as third years, we're going to be applying sort of, I imagine, January-ish time or that sort of thing. So how do we tell objectively that our portfolio is ready? Because some studios will look at your thing, they won't want you in the company, and they won't look at you again for like say 3 months. So how do we know that we're definitely ready to apply to that role?
So for anyone who didn't hear that, that is, how do you know when you're definitely ready to be applying for jobs? Yeah.
And the answer is, you don't.
Sorry.
You can have the same design portfolio. I've got a background in shooters and I've got a background in cinematics because of Supermassive, but I'm going to struggle to apply for a job at King because they work in mobile. Yes, I've got industry experience, yes, that makes me a bit more valuable, but ultimately this says your skills and your portfolio are always relative and subjective. So you're going to have a much better job identifying your strengths and weaknesses and where you can focus your efforts. So really it's down to you to say that now it's starting to be good enough. But if you need a benchmark, start looking at the folks who are already working at that studio and see like where their portfolio is at before they got hired. People generally don't update their portfolios after they got hired, which is a bit of a shame, but you get what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's hard to say sometimes.
I mean, time for one more question.
Or you can chase me outside.
Or fine. Okay, that's probably the better way. There's an interview. Well, thank you very. Oh, well, go on.
Yeah. You said a few slides ago that there was a website that we could check for internships and things like that.
That was a spreadsheet collaboration with. Yeah. So again,
Where is that? How do I?
To access it. So if you go on my Twitter, or at least try and email me on the this page. Hope all of you took a picture of this, by the way, because I don't have business cards. Yeah. So you'll be able to find on my website. If you go to the contact page, you'll be able to find this deck. This is freely available. I don't believe in like gatekeeping this information. Like this information is available for you guys to use and utilize. And that's a spreadsheet you'll find on that link as well. Like so just a hyperlink. You'll be able to access it very easily.
Cool. That's amazing. But yeah, so anyone who wants to talk to George, I would grab him outside for an interview. Another thank you, thunderous round of applause, please.
Thank you.